and welcome back. My name is Brian and I make videos on my 2019 Q50S Signature Edition, and it's rear wheel drive, just to put that in there. Today I'm going to discuss with you, the viewers, is a Q50 reliable? Is it a reliable car? This is a 2019. It's the 3.0T turbo model, and I'm just going to discuss with you about my experience so far of having it. Plus, I've had two more Nissan vehicles, so this is a Nissan vehicle. Had two trucks, the Frontier trucks, and I had those for about 5 years. I had two of them, and I just don't keep my vehicles very long. But with that said, I'm going to discuss that with you in this next clip. All right, do I think an Infiniti car or this Q50 is a reliable car? And my answer is yes, I do. What I'm basing that off of is I am going to be turning 50 here in a couple of months, so I'm 50, which is called 50 years old. And so I've been driving since I was 15 years old, so I've had a lot of different cars. I typically will have cars two years. There isn't some times where I've had a car longer, but most of the time it's about 2 years. So if you put in the number of cars that I've had and some experience, that'll give you a little bit of what you can think about my opinion. But Q50, this is the 3.0T. I would say that hopefully this is going to be a very reliable car. I don't have a ton of miles on my vehicle since it's a 19. I try not to drive it as much as I could. I do a lot of business trips, and I elect to, when I go down to Houston or San Antonio, or I go to the west, towards the oil industry, I typically will rent a car, and it puts less wear and tear on mine, and plus I avoid getting rock damage to the front and rock chips to the windshield, and a possible crack, which has happened on a few occasions with rented vehicles. Drop it off and then I turn it back in and I'm done with that, and it's not my car. So yeah, I love this car, and it's been a great car. So let me get into more detail about why I think this is reliable and what makes for a reliable car. Okay. Okay, so with this car in mind, I am tuned. I got my car tuned through Ecutech with their software, and I got it tuned. I put about 3,000 miles on my car. I just am not a big fan of taking a car from a dealership, driving a couple hundred miles, and then tuning it, and exhaust and stuff is different, wheels, but really tweaking and the motor. I like to give it a little bit more, and even 3,000 miles was sooner than what I would have done, but I was itching to get it done. I might wait 5,000 miles, but yeah, and I broke my car in correctly. I'm very meticulous. This all matters in regards to reliability of a car that you're going to buy, and hopefully I'm speaking up high enough so that you can hear me. You buy a car from an individual that treats their vehicle wrong, then you're not going to get a reliable vehicle. Even though it may look nice on the outside, you're going to get a vehicle that typically will have more problems. And it just reminds me of an experience when I was in Grapevine, when I lived there at Grapevine, Texas. I'm in Dallas, Texas. That I took it in my Volkswagen 2.0T to the oil change place there right by my home. Took it in there, and at that time there was a big Escalade in there. And I just heard some talk about this person that leased that or leases them or turns around and buys them and drives the shit out of them and then turns them in. That vehicle had 30,000 miles on the oil change. And the guy brought the vehicle in and just topped it off for 30,000 miles that were on the car. Would you want a vehicle that had the same oil in it for 30,000 miles? And this was like maybe 15 years ago, so oil might have come a little bit further away since then about reliability and oil, being good oil. But no, I wouldn't. So the next person that's going to get that vehicle has no idea that vehicle was driven like that. So with that said, I change my oil often. I changed my oil at 3,000 miles after break-in. Before I got tuned, I changed it, and then I changed it again because I'm meticulous and I look at my oil, and it was pretty dark. I've been driving the car, racing it around more than most people would. So I looked at the oil, and it just was a bad color. It was getting black, not just a brown or a milky, or a caramel brown, but it was getting black. So I changed it. Now it's, I think, at 3,500 miles, and so that's still on this oil. So I look at my oil in that regards and how hard I've been driving the car, and then I'll change that, based on that fact. I would probably never let this car go 10,000 miles on a single oil change, even if I maybe bought the 20,000 mile oil that's out now, Mobil 1 extended life. But like I said, I drive this car more hard, 0 to 60s all the time, trying to get, quick times. But yeah, so I drive the car hard, and it's hot here in Texas. It's already up to 100 degrees with humidity. So, that has a lot to do on when you want to change your oil and how you're treating your car. So with that said, it's hard to see a car on a lot and understand what's the history of that. I also, too, keep in my manual, I write down all my oil changes and things that I've done to the car, and I did that to my Ford Focus ST 2014 when I traded that in to the Nissan dealer for one of my Nissan trucks. I tried to make sure that they knew that, because I had modifications on the car, like the oil catch can, and that needed to be drained. And so I wrote notes to the future owner to be helpful, to tell them what I had done to the car and that they needed to check that oil catch can about every 1,000 miles. And so that's just things that I do. So you want to, it's tough to buy a used car, and maybe that's why I don't buy a lot of used cars unless, or if it's a car that has the potential to be, as you see these Q50s, they're constantly modded by these young people. And it's not necessarily just young people, harshing on young people, but they tend to, lower it and put coilovers on them and go in and mod all these things and maybe not put the time and the thought into buying the quality parts, and then just kind of cutting corners and maybe doing them and then they install themselves and not installing or uninstalling and reinstalling correctly and torquing the bolts down. So, later, 10,000, 20,000 miles down the road, or 30,000, when you buy the car, you're buying into someone else's problems that have gone in and wanted a new display because they didn't have Apple CarPlay, so they took the whole dash apart and installed this screen, and they didn't know what they were doing, and even the screen may not have been the proper, the best setup to have that screen. So, the car could have all kinds of electrical bugs because of that screen being installed and being installed incorrectly or even correctly. So you just want to, when I bought this car, I didn't really think that so many people, on the forums were buying these cars and just automatically, day one, wheels, exhaust, spoilers, JD4s, just all these parts. And yes, I do have some modified parts on mine, like the tune and the heat exchanger and the bushing collars from Z1 Motorsports. But I took a lot of time, I did a lot of research, and I have all the proper tools. I torqued everything down. I studied YouTube over and over and over, many hours, to make sure I properly installed. And then even when I installed my heat exchanger, I went ahead and bought the air vac tool that takes the air out of the system so that the system flows correctly. And a lot of people doing these heat exchangers are not doing that. They're just driving their car for a week and refilling, and that is not a good thing, because I won't go into a lot of detail, but you're sacrificing your your heat exchanger's pump, and I think that pump's like $350. So does that mean your heat pump? Well, I mean your heat exchanger pump will go out sooner, possibly, and so there's just all kinds of things about buying cars that you need to know. But buying something new, I know that this car is in really good shape. So yeah, so with that said, yeah, I love my car again, and I really enjoy driving it. So let me touch on some more points for you. Okay, also too, which I think is a good point to bring up, obviously it depends on, God, keep my knees on the rocks, depends on what year model Q50 you're buying. Maybe I can just lean up against the car and be in the video, but depends on the year model. I've read and done my research, that 2000, the Infiniti brand has been around, but the Q50s would just start with the 2016 with the 3.0T, the first one. I've read that there are reliability issues with certain year models, and this Q50 got improved upon, at least by 19. The earlier 16, 17 maybe had inferior turbos, not inferior, well, turbos that quite weren't up to the spec that they needed to be, and that's why you see a lot of people having turbo issues. Plus they're modifying their car and putting some more strain on them. But I think from what I've read, the 2019 and the 2020, and maybe just a little upgrade on the 2018, is that the turbos have been improved on, and so a little bit more reliable, and that's likely with some of the other things in the car as well. So it just depends on what model you're looking at, and you need to probably be aware and do your research. 2016 was the first 3.0T, and then 17, 18, 19, and 20, and soon we're going to be doing 21s here. So with that said, that has a lot to do with the reliability too. So keep that in mind. All right, now I'm going to touch on a little bit different topic. Well, not a different topic, but a different point. It has to do with what have I experienced with this car personally that's bothered me or not bothered me. And I'll tell you a little bit of stories about some of the other cars that I've owned in the short amount of time. This car's got 7,000 miles on it, so it's not an extended amount of time. But some of my other new cars that I purchased from other manufacturers like Ford have developed 2 or 3 problems within that 10,000 miles that have been very bothersome. The little small minor problem, if you can even call it a problem, that I've had with this car, and this is the only one, is that I have a little rattle in my sunroof. Not when it's shut, but when I open the sunroof and pull the shade open and pull the sunroof back, there's just a mild squeaking noise in the mechanism. So when I'm driving around, it's not just in the mechanism, but as I'm driving around, it's got a little bit of a squeak noise to it. So, I could take that into Nissan or Infiniti, but the problem is, and I've worked at different dealerships, not as a mechanic, but in different areas of the dealerships where I've seen and seen firsthand, that to fix that, I've looked in there myself. There's just not enough space to get in there to see what's going on. So the mechanics would have to probably pull the headliner down, remove the headliner and the panels, and that's just not something that you really want to jump into, because when you put panels back onto the car, whenever you take something off, it never fits back precisely as it was put on from the factory. A lot of this stuff is mounted with little small screws, but a lot of it too is mounted with plastic nuts with little flanges on them. When they get pressed in, press fit, and so you potentially are increasing the risk for new squeaks and new rattles to come. So I don't know what I would do with that. It's not super bad, and it's not all the time, but like I said, you don't want to go in and start ripping out panels where people, typically younger people. I was young too at one time, so I did these things, So you buy a 2016 or a 2017 Q50, Q60, whatever car you're buying, and that person wanted to put a better stereo in there. And I have installed complete stereo systems with subwoofer, amps, tweeters, mid-range, highs, and everything, and new head units. And I have had to entirely take the whole interior out of the car to do it properly. And again, when I put that back together,
you know, you're putting everything back on, and you're increasing the chance for more rattles and just more errors. So it really just depends, you know, on how your car's been treated as far as reliability. So that's something you should look into and just be aware of. And you know, when you're sniffing around the car, when you're trying to buy it used, and figure out how the car was treated. So with that said, move on to the next thing.
All right, hopefully you found my video informative and helpful. I don't have a ton of subscribers, and I haven't been doing this long with this car, about 10 months, but I've had a few, I've seen over and over again kind of a common theme where people want to know, they want to get into a Q50. A lot of people online, YouTube, are researching vehicles, and I understand that. I do that completely too. And they don't know anything about Infiniti like I did myself before I bought this car. I just never really considered getting an Infiniti. It just wasn't the car that I was looking for. You know, I was more of a performance guy, and I didn't really associate, you know, racing and quick 0 to 60s and, you know, 0 to 100s in an Infiniti car, you know, and also too versus price. So a lot of people want to know, you know, is this car reliable? How have you liked it? And it's been a fantastic car for the time that I've owned this. And I'll continually do updates as I own it. Hopefully I plan on, since I've done these modifications and I've invested in this car and I'm very, very happy with it, hopefully I'll keep it for 5 years, you know, and who knows after that. But the reliability on this car has been very good. So I just thought it'd be good to make a video and address this, and I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I can provide that is helpful information that can pop in my head right now. But I think the key is just when you're buying one of these vehicles used, I mean new, it's not such a problem, but when you're buying it used, is you just want to, you know, and that's tough. I've been in the motorcycle industry for about 30 years and probably closer to about 45 years that I have been riding and racing motorcycles and dirt bikes and motocross. And I just, through that time of working in the dealerships of, you know, maybe 15 years, 10 years, and taking in used bikes, and also selling all my personal bikes, find ways to know how they were taken care of and telltale signs of how they were not taken care of. So again, oil changes and fluid changes are essential, and it'd be nice to see some documentation on that if you're buying this car used from an individual, and to try to find some documentation, some factual documentation on oil changes. Don't buy a car that's had, you know, oil changes, that's 30,000 miles on it, it's only had 2 oil changes. It's just not a good thing. So with that said, let me see here. You know, fluid and maintenance, you know, tires, tire wear. Other than that, I think this is a great car to purchase if you're looking for a sedan. Now, if you're looking for a muscle car, obviously this is not it, and this is going to be hard to turn into a muscle car-ish type vehicle. You know, I think the Mustangs, I was looking at GT 5.0s when I bought this, and I was looking at the 392, the Dodge 392, you know, their models, the 2 models that they have, and it just kind of boiled down to the price that I could get, you know, per about the $45,000 to $50,000 car, because they all fall within that. But I chose this vehicle because they worked a really good deal for me at Infiniti, and it made sense, and I fell in love with this car, with its body shape and the chrome, black-ish chrome wheels that were on it, and the interior. The interior is solid. I love the interior, and you just hear a lot of people down talk this car, that it's outdated and that it needs to be refreshed, and that, I guess that just depends on the person. If you've been driving these Infinitis for the last 15 years, and that's commonplace to you, but I've driven all kinds of cars, and when I jumped in this one, I was blown away by the interior
and the quietness of the interior and the function of the interior and the look of the interior and the seats. Everything is awesome and fits me really, really well. It fits my personality, so I've just been really, really happy with this car, and I have really high expectations. But again, when you're buying these used, reliability can come into play, because it just depends again on what the person has done in the car, how they've treated it, the maintenance schedule that they've followed. So if you get a good car, obviously, you know, someone's taking care of the car, you should be able to get a reliable 2016, 17, 18 model car, and just go with that. So hopefully, again, you found this video informative, you've liked it. Subscribe if you do find some of my video content helpful. It's getting really, really hot here, and I'm not necessarily going to be doing a lot more mods right now on the car. I am still waiting my big next step, because I am tuned at about 500 horsepower, a little under 500 horsepower at the motor, and then over 500 torque, and I just can't get any traction. But here's the thing, the one tire that I want, it's the new Nitto NT55R2, and it's a new tire, and I won't go into a lot of detail about why I'm stuck on that tire, but it's a newly designed revamped tire of that series, and it has plenty of tread and channels to distribute the water, so if you do get caught in the rain, because I don't want to switch tires. I just want to have a tire on there all the time, and I just want to drive it around. I know I'll wear the tire out faster, but I just want to be safe when I'm driving in all kinds of different environments here in Texas. So I'm just waiting for those tires. The specific size is the 275 40R19 in this tire, and it's just because of this virus. They're not. I can't find it. It's not out yet. Nitto's not answering their phone, because I want to get some details on the release. But a couple of the other tires in that version are out, like the 305 and the greater sizes. But this car, I don't want to put a 305 width tire on it and get new wheels. So with that said, have a great day, and I will see you soon. Hopefully, when I get new tires, new drag radials put on the rear. Have a